The smoke still hangs in the air when I lower my bolt pistol. Burned promethium and ionized flesh, that particular stench that never truly leaves you once you have smelled it enough times. It clings to the inside of my nostrils, settles into the fibers of my greatcoat, becomes part of the breathing rhythm of my existence. I can taste copper on my tongue, though I have not bitten it. Guilt, perhaps, or merely the residue of duty performed without hesitation. The distinction ceased to matter years ago. Private Denon lies 3 meters from where I stand, his body crumpled in the awkward geometry that only violent death produces. His blood spreads across the wooden planking of the command tent in patterns that remind me of the topographic maps spread across the strategic table behind me. Dark continents expanding into unexplored territory. He had been weeping before I pulled the trigger. Begging, actually, in that high, desperate voice that all cowards discover when they finally understand that mercy will not be forthcoming. He promised he would be brave if given another chance. He swore by the Emperor's name that the fear would not take him again. He was 19 years old, raised in the southern manufactorums of Cardia, trained for 6 months before being shipped to this Emperor-forsaken rock at the edge of Imperial space. None of it mattered. The bolt round entered through his left temple and removed most of the right side of his skull. Clean. Efficient. Exactly as the Schola Progenium taught me during those endless hours on the firing range where we learned that hesitation was more dangerous than cruelty. The echo of the shot still reverberates in my ears. Or perhaps that is merely the memory of every execution that came before this one. They blend together after a while, a symphony of finality conducted by my hand. I turn toward the mirror hanging from a support beam near the tent entrance. It is cracked, a spiderweb fracture running from the upper, left corner to the center, distorting my reflection into fragments. The face that stares back at me is my own, and yet utterly foreign. A mask of authority carved from flesh that once belonged to a boy who believed in heroism and honor. The peaked cap sits perfectly level on my head, the golden imperial aquila catching the light from the lumens overhead. My greatcoat is black as void space, immaculate despite the dust and ash that covers everything else in this camp. The crimson sash across my chest marks me as an officer of the Officio Prefectus, and the silver skull and laurel pin at my collar identifies my authority to every soldier in this regiment. I am Commissar Matthias Kane. I am the Emperor's judgment made manifest. I am the blade that maintains discipline when courage fails and the darkness presses too close. I am necessary. I am alone. Outside this tent, 10,000 men prepare for tomorrow's assault against the greenskin horde that threatens to overrun our defensive positions. 10,000 soldiers who eat together, sleep in crowded barracks together, joke and gamble and share ration packs and photographs from home together. 10,000 men who have formed the bonds that allow human beings to face certain death without breaking. And in the center of their camp, in this command tent where strategic decisions are made and orders are given, I stand in absolute isolation. The silence is profound. Not the absence of sound. I can hear the distant rumble of artillery, the grinding of tank treads on volcanic rock, the murmured prayers of soldiers preparing their equipment for battle. But there is a different kind of silence that surrounds me like a pressure field. The silence of space deliberately maintained. The silence that exists when 10,000 men consciously choose to stay away from something they fear more than the enemy. I holster my bolt pistol and feel the familiar weight settle against my hip. The weapon is an extension of my authority, loaded always with a magazine of 12 rounds. 12 chances to restore order. 12 opportunities to remind the regiment that cowardice is a disease that spreads faster than any plague, and the only cure is immediate and absolute. I have used 3 rounds today. This morning I executed a squad leader who had falsified patrol reports to avoid dangerous reconnaissance. At midday, I shot a Medicaid orderly who was hoarding analgesics for personal use rather than distributing them to the wounded. And now, Private Denon, who ran from his post during last night's skirmish when the orcs probed our eastern flank. 3 men dead by my hand before the sun has fully set. 3 families who will receive death notices marked with the black seal of dishonor. 3 names added to the journal I keep in my footlocker, that leather-bound record of every soul I have sent to the Emperor's judgment. The weight of my peaked cap presses against my skull like a crown that cannot be removed. The fabric, band inside, has worn grooves into my temples over the years, permanent indentations that mark me even when I remove it for sleep. Not that sleep comes easily anymore. The faces visit me in those hours, hundreds of them now, perhaps thousands if I count back across every campaign and every world where I have enforced the Emperor's discipline. They do not accuse, they do not rage, they simply stare with the empty eyes of the dead, and I wake reaching for my pistol, finding comfort only in its cold certainty. I look at Private Denon's body one final time. In 3 hours, the corpse detail will remove him. His equipment will be redistributed. His name will be struck from the regimental rolls and added to the casualties list with the notation, "Died with dishonor." By tomorrow morning, the men will speak of him only in whispers, if they speak of him at all. The memory of his execution will serve its purpose, reminding every soldier what awaits those who fail in their duty. And I will stand, here, in this tent, in this camp, in this war, exactly as alone as I am now. I step out of the command tent into the dying light of Mordion's edge. The sky bleeds red and orange across the horizon, where the system's bloated sun sinks below the jagged peaks of the Infernus Mountains. This world is classified as a fortress planet, though that designation feels optimistic given our current circumstances. The Cadian 800th Regiment arrived here 14 months ago, deployed to reinforce the existing garrison against what Imperial intelligence had described as a minor orc incursion. Intelligence was wrong. What we face is not an incursion, but a full war, a tide of green-skinned Xenos that pours across the northern wastes like a living flood of violence and crude machinery. The camp stretches before me in organized rows that speak to Cadian discipline. 10,000 men divided into 10 companies, each company subdivided into platoons of 50 soldiers. The arrangement is precise, efficient, designed to maximize defensive capability while maintaining clear lines of command. Rows of reinforced tents for the infantry, armored bunkers for the heavy weapons teams, the vehicle depot where Lehman Russ battle tanks sit in silent vigil, their turrets pointing toward the enemy-held territories beyond our perimeter. The Medici station marked by white flags bearing the Crimson Cross of Battlefield Mercy. The munitions dumps surrounded by razor wire and patrolling sentries. Everything has its place. Everything serves its function, including me. I walk through the camp, and the reaction is immediate. Soldiers who had been gathered around cooking fires fall silent. Men who were cleaning their laser guns snap to attention, their faces carefully neutral masks that hide whatever thoughts churn beneath. A squad returning from patrol duty spots me from 50 meters away and alters their route to avoid crossing my path. This is not unusual. This is how it has always been. My black greatcoat cuts through the camp like a shadow, and soldiers part before me like water flowing around stone. The trenches begin at the northern edge of the camp, carved into the volcanic rock that forms the bones of this world. Black stone sharp enough to cut through flak armor if a soldier is careless during the frequent shellings. The excavation required plasma cutters and industrial drilling equipment brought from the manufactorums in the southern settlements. 3 months of constant labor to create the defensive network that now holds back the greenskin tide. The trenches run for kilometers in layered defensive lines, each positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire. each reinforced with ferrocrete barriers and weapons emplacements. Artillery thunder rolls across the landscape like distant storms. Our batteries fire continuously, lobbing high-explosive shells into the Orc positions 8 kilometers north. The enemy responds in kind, though their weapons are crude, things cobbled together from scrap metal and looted Imperial technology. The accuracy is terrible. The volume compensates. Every hour brings another barrage that shakes the earth and sends plumes of black smoke rising into the rust-colored sky. I am Commissar of the Officio Prefectus, assigned to this regiment by order of Segmentum Command. My authority supersedes every officer below the rank of Lord General. I answer to no one except the Commissariat itself, and through them, to the Emperor's divine will. I do not command the regiment. That responsibility belongs to Colonel Harren Vaust, a competent officer with 30 years of combat experience. I do not plan the tactical deployments. That is the purview of his staff officers and strategic advisors. I exist outside the chain of command, above it, separate from it entirely. My function is singular and absolute. I maintain discipline. I ensure that every soldier fights to their last breath and last round. I inspire through fear, because fear is honest and immediate in ways that honor and duty sometimes fail to be, when the lass fire cuts through the air and comrades die screaming in the mud. I am the Emperor's judgment made flesh, the walking embodiment of consequences for those who falter or flee or fail in their sacred obligation to hold the line against humanity's enemies. Every soldier in this regiment knows my name. They whisper it in their tents at night when they think I cannot hear. They invoke it as warning when new replacements arrive from the training depots, fresh-faced boys who have not yet learned what war truly costs. They tell stories, embellished with each retelling, of executions I have performed and soldiers I have condemned. Most of the stories are true. Some are exaggerations. I do nothing to correct either version because both serve the same purpose. The Astra Militarum functions on a razor's edge between courage and terror, between the willingness to charge into certain death for the Imperium and the animal instinct to run, to hide, to preserve one's own life above all else. Soldiers are human, and humans break under pressure. They break when they watch their friends torn apart by Orc choppers. They break when ammunition runs low and the enemy keeps coming. They break when hunger gnaws at their bellies and exhaustion makes every step feel like walking through deep water. That is where I exist, in that space between breaking and holding. I am the blade that keeps them balanced, the weight that tips the scale toward duty when every instinct screams for survival. My bolt pistol is loaded with rounds that have only one purpose, and every man in this regiment understands that I will use it without hesitation if they fail. The sun disappears behind the mountains, and the camp transitions into night watch routines. Lumens flicker to life along the trench networks. Sentries take their positions at designated intervals. Officers conduct final inspections before retiring to their quarters, and I walk among them, a spectre in black, maintaining the isolation that my function demands. I see Colonel Vaust speaking with his command staff near the strategic planning bunker. He notices me, offers a curt nod of acknowledgement. I return the gesture. Our relationship is professional, cordial, built on mutual respect for each other's roles. But we have never shared a meal. We have never spoken of anything beyond military necessity. He knows, as I know, that closeness would compromise my ability to execute him if duty required it. That is the truth no one speaks aloud. A commissar must remain separate because a commissar must be willing to shoot anyone, friend or stranger, hero or coward, officer or enlisted. The moment attachment forms, judgment becomes clouded, and clouded judgment gets soldiers killed by the thousands rather than the dozens. So I walk alone through the camp of 10,000 men, and the silence follows me like a faithful companion. The silence does not bother me now. I have grown accustomed to it over the years, learned to find a strange comfort in the absence of connection. But it was not always this way. There was a time, brief and distant, when I believed my duty could coexist with camaraderie, when I thought the men would understand that my executions served them, protected them, ensured their survival through the enforcement of discipline. I learned differently on a world whose name I can no longer remember during my first month of service as a newly commissioned Commissar attached to the Validian 92nd Regiment. His name was Victor Renz. 18 Terran years old, though he looked younger in the moments before I killed him. Brown hair that stuck up in awkward angles no matter how much regulation hair gel he applied. A scar across his chin from some childhood accident. Hands that trembled even when he stood at attention during morning inspection. He had been assigned to 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad, a rifleman like 10,000 other riflemen spread across the Imperium's countless war zones. The Greenskins had come at dawn, not the massive war we face here on Mordian's Edge, but a raiding party of perhaps 200 orcs testing our defensive perimeter, standard engagement protocols. The line held in most sectors, but on the eastern flank, where 3rd Platoon maintained their position in hastily dug trenches, the Xenos broke through. I watched from the command observation post as the green tide crashed against our lines. Lasfire lit the pre-dawn darkness in brilliant blue-white streaks. Artillery shells burst among the enemy ranks, and in the center of 3rd Platoon's position, I saw Victor Renz stand up from behind his barricade, throw down his laser gun, and run. He ran directly away from the engagement, not toward a better firing position, not to retrieve ammunition or assist wounded comrades. He simply fled, terror overriding every month of training and every oath he had, sworn when they pressed the Emperor's Aquila into his palm and told him he was a soldier now. I saw other men in his squad notice. I saw hesitation ripple through their positions like a virus spreading through a population. The execution had to be immediate. I found him 300 meters behind the lines, crouched behind a supply crate marked with the cogwheel symbol of the Adeptus Mechanicus. His breath came in ragged gasps that sounded more animal than human. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, seeing something that existed only in the landscape of his personal terror. When I rounded the corner of the supply depot and he saw my black greatcoat, my peaked cap, the bolt pistol already drawn and aimed at his center mass, something in him broke completely. He wept. Not the dignified tears of a man accepting his fate, but the desperate sobbing of a child who has finally encountered a monster he cannot escape. "Please," he said, and the word was barely intelligible through the gasping breaths. "Please, Commissar, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I'll be brave. I swear by the Emperor I'll be brave if you give me another chance. Please don't kill me, please." My training at the Schola Progenium had been thorough. Years of indoctrination, psychological conditioning, tactical instruction, and moral philosophy compressed into a singular understanding of duty. Cowardice is contagion. One man who runs gives permission for others to follow. Mercy shown to the weak endangers the strong. One death now prevents 1,000 deaths later when the entire line collapses because discipline has eroded beyond recovery. The mathematics were absolute. The morality was clear. The Emperor demanded this sacrifice. I pulled the trigger. The bolt round caught him in the chest, the mass-reactive charge detonating inside his ribcage and removing most of his torso in a spray of red mist and bone fragments. He was dead before his body completed its fall backward against the supply crate. The execution was textbook perfect, efficient, clean. Exactly as the instructors had taught me during those endless sessions in the practice ranges, where we learned that hesitation was more dangerous than cruelty. I returned to the command post. The line had held. 3rd Platoon, having seen their fleeing comrade executed by the Commissar, fought with renewed ferocity born from understanding that death waited behind them as surely as it waited ahead. They held their position. The greenskin raid was repulsed. Casualties were acceptable. The engagement was logged as a tactical victory. My first execution was recorded in my service file with commendation for swift action in maintaining discipline under combat conditions. That night, alone in my quarters, I found my hands shaking. The tremor was subtle but persistent, a vibration that traveled from my fingers up through my wrists and into my forearms. I stared at these hands that had killed a man that morning, expecting to feel something, righteous, some sense of the Emperor's approval flowing through me like the warmth of benediction. Instead, I felt hollow, empty in a way that had nothing to do with hunger or exhaustion. I had done my duty. I had maintained discipline. I had saved lives through the application of immediate and brutal justice, and I felt nothing except the weight of isolation settling onto my shoulders like a physical mass. The next day, I walked through the regiment and saw how the soldiers looked at me. Not with respect, not with gratitude for having saved their line from collapse. They looked at me with the hollow-eyed fear that humans reserve for predators, for things that kill without emotion or hesitation, for necessary evils that serve a purpose but can never be embraced. I was 19 years old, barely older than Victor Renz had been, and I understood in that moment the fundamental truth of my existence. I would never have comrades, only subjects, only potential victims whose behavior I would judge and whose lives I would end if they failed to meet the standard. The black greatcoat was not a uniform. It was a barrier. The peaked cap was not an honor. It was a brand. I was Commissar, and that word meant alone in every language across every world in the Imperium. The shaking in my hands stopped after 3 days. The emptiness remained. It remains still, here on Mordian's edge, as I stand in the darkness between the trenches and remember the boy whose name I will never forget. Victor Renz taught me what I was. The years that followed taught me what I could never be. There was a period, mercifully brief, when I attempted to bridge the distance between myself and the soldiers I was assigned to protect through fear. Small gestures that I believed might demonstrate that I was not merely an instrument of execution, but a fellow servant of the Emperor who understood the burdens they carried. I learned that some distances cannot be bridged, some roles cannot accommodate human connection without collapsing under the weight of their own contradictions. The first attempt came 3 months after Victor. I was walking the trench lines during evening ration distribution, conducting my routine inspection of defensive positions. A squad of riflemen sat huddled against the ferrocrete wall, passing around a single ration pack and dividing its meager contents with the careful mathematics of men who understand hunger. I stopped beside them, reached into my greatcoat, and produced one of my own rations. Standard issue corpse starch pressed into blocks and flavored with synthetic protein that approximated the taste of grilled protein. I extended it toward the nearest soldier, a lance corporal whose name tape identified him as Morin. "Your squad looks undermanned, Corporal," I said, keeping my voice level, almost conversational. "An extra ration might help maintain strength for tomorrow's patrol." Morin stared at the ration pack as if I were offering him a primed frag grenade. The other soldiers had gone absolutely still, their half-eaten portions forgotten in their hands. The corporal's eyes darted between my face and the offered food, searching for the trap he was certain existed within this gesture. Finally, he took it with trembling fingers, came to rigid attention, and spoke in a voice drained of all inflection. "Thank you, Commissar. The Emperor protects." "At ease, Corporal. I only wanted to—" But he was already retreating, the ration pack clutched against his chest like a religious relic, his squad rising to follow him deeper into the trench network. I stood there alone, my hand still extended into empty space, and understood that my attempt at kindness had been received as something else entirely. Perhaps they thought I was testing them. Perhaps they believed accepting food from a commissar created some obligation that would cost them more than hunger ever could. Perhaps they simply could not reconcile the man who offered rations with the man who executed their comrades for failure. I tried other approaches. During a tactical briefing with the platoon sergeants, I asked Sergeant Callis about his family. I had reviewed his service record and knew he had 3 children on his homeworld of Vergast, 2 daughters and a son whom he had not seen in 7 years of continuous deployment. It seemed a natural question, the kind that soldiers ask each other to maintain the illusion that they are still connected to something beyond warfare. "How old is your son now, Sergeant? He must be approaching conscription age." Callis went rigid in his seat. The other sergeants fell silent, their attention fixed on their data slates with sudden intensity. 14 Terran Standard, Commissar," Callis replied in the clipped monotone of a man reciting information under interrogation. "He serves the Emperor through factory work in the southern manufactorums. You must be proud." "Yes, Commissar. Permission to return to my duties, Commissar." I granted the permission, and the briefing room emptied within 30 seconds. Through the window, I watched the sergeants gather outside, speaking in low, urgent voices. One of them glanced back toward the building, and I saw the expression on his face. Not anger, not resentment. Fear that I had taken interest in Callis's family, that this interest meant something sinister, that tomorrow or the next day, there would be consequences for some imagined infraction that my question had revealed. The whispers reached me in fragments, overheard during the moments when soldiers believed I was out of earshot. I have learned to walk quietly in my decades of service, and the trenches carry sound in unexpected ways. The stories they tell about commissars have taken on the quality of legends, cautionary tales shared in the darkness to explain the inexplicable brutality of our function. I heard Commissar Verney on Calth executed an entire platoon because their trench wasn't dug to proper depth specifications. My cousin served under Commissar Mordin, said she shot a man for smiling during morning prayers because levity showed insufficient reverence for the Emperor. Commissar Caney's just waiting, watching us, looking for excuses. My sergeant says commissars have quotas. They have to execute a certain number per month, or the officio prefectus questions their dedication. None of it was true. Some commissars are unnecessarily cruel, certainly, but the officio prefectus does not operate on quotas, and no commissar I have ever known would execute a soldier for smiling. But truth matters less than perception when fear governs behavior. The soldiers needed to believe I was capable of random violence because that belief kept them alert, kept them disciplined, kept them alive. My attempts to demonstrate otherwise were not kindness. They were sabotage of the fear that sustained them. Even Chaplain Voigt maintained careful distance. We spoke often, coordinating the spiritual maintenance of the regiment with the disciplinary maintenance I provided. He was a good man, dedicated to his calling, sincere in his faith that the Emperor's light could reach even the darkest corners of human frailty. He treated me with professional courtesy. He consulted me on matters of morale. He never invited me to join him for evening prayers when he gathered informally with soldiers seeking comfort from the Imperial Creed. He understood, as I understood, that my presence would transform those gatherings from moments of spiritual solace into something else entirely. Soldiers cannot confess their fears to a chaplain when the man who executes cowards sits in the same room. The officers were no different. Colonel Vaust briefed me on tactical situations, shared intelligence reports, sought my input on matters of discipline and regimental readiness. After battles, when the company commanders gathered to drink whatever alcohol could be procured and toast, the dead with the living, I was never invited. The oversight was deliberate, mutual, necessary. They needed those moments of release, that temporary illusion that they were more than cogs in the imperial war machine. My presence would remind them that relaxation was a luxury constantly monitored, that even in celebration they were being judged, that the man in the black greatcoat never truly rested. I stopped attempting connection after 6 months. The lesson had been learned thoroughly. A commissar exists in perpetual isolation not because of cruelty or choice, but because the function itself demands it. To inspire through fear requires being feared. To judge without hesitation requires being separate from those being judged. I wear this black greatcoat and peaked cap, and they mark me as surely as any brand. I am necessary. I am alone. These truths are inseparable, and I have decades yet to serve before age or battlefield claim me. The isolation deepens with each passing year. It deepens tonight as I stand in the darkness and listen to 10,000 men living their lives in careful avoidance of mine. The isolation did not begin with Victor Renz. It began years earlier, in a place designed to forge servants of the Emperor from the raw material of orphaned children. The Schola Progenium on Ophelia VII, a fortress monastery that rose from the planet's northern tundra like a monument to duty and sacrifice. I was 7 Terran years old when they brought me there, freshly orphaned after my parents fell during a heretic uprising on their garrison world. I remember little of them now. A woman's voice singing hymns, a man's calloused hands teaching me to hold a laser gun. Impressions more than memories, worn smooth by decades of intentional forgetting. The scholar does not encourage attachment to the past. We were progenitor, children of the Imperium's faithful dead, and our purpose was to become the next generation of commissars, stormtroopers, sororitas, administrators, and inquisitorial acolytes. The training was brutal by design. Physical conditioning that pushed young bodies to the edge of collapse and then demanded more. Academic instruction in imperial doctrine, military tactics, xenobiology, and the 1,000 subtle variations of heresy. Psychological conditioning through deprivation, competition, and the constant reinforcement that we existed only to serve. But within that brutality, there were friendships, bonds forged between children who shared the same suffering, the same ambitions, the same desperate need to prove themselves worthy of the sacrifice their parents had made. We were a unit, those of us assigned to training cohort 17. 32 children who ate together, trained together, slept in the same barracks where the temperature dropped below freezing during winter months, and the proctors denied us additional blankets because comfort bred weakness. Marcus Venn was my closest companion, tall for his age, with black hair that he kept regulation short and grey eyes that always seemed to be calculating angles and possibilities. He wanted to serve the Inquisition, dreamed of becoming an acolyte in the service of those who hunted the Imperium's most dangerous enemies. We sparred together in the combat training halls, matched in skill though he favored speed where I favored precision. During the rare moments of rest between lessons, we would sit in the corner of the barracks and speak in whispers about the futures we imagined. He would hunt heretics across the galaxy. I would lead troops in glorious campaigns against Xenos threats. We were 13 years old and believed that service meant heroism. Seneca Trier trained alongside us, one of the girls marked early for potential selection by the Adepta Sororitas. She was fierce in a way that made even the proctors notice. Small and compact, with auburn hair and a scar across her forearm from a training accident that she wore like a badge of honor. She beat both Marcus and me in the marksmanship trials during our 14th year, placing 300 rounds through targets at varying distances without a single miss. We celebrated together that night, sharing a smuggled ration of real food that Marcus had somehow acquired from the supply depot. Protein that tasted like actual meat rather than corpse starch. We laughed, quietly because laughter after lights out earned punishment details. And for those few hours we were not progenitor being molded into imperial servants. We were simply children who had found friendship in a place designed to strip away everything except duty. The selection came during our 17th year. The proctors summoned us individually to the administration chapel, where our futures were decided by men and women who reviewed our performance records, psychological evaluations, and genetic markers. Senna went first. She returned to the barracks 3 hours later with the white and crimson robes of a novitiate in the Order of the Valorous Heart. Her face glowed with pride and fierce joy. She would serve the Emperor as his daughter in battle, wielding faith and bolter against the darkness. Marcus received his selection 2 days later, inquisitorial acolyte, assigned to the retinue of Inquisitor Valdane of the Ordo Hereticus. He tried to contain his excitement but failed. We celebrated together one final time, the three of us and a handful of others from Cohort 17 who had received their postings. My selection came last. The proctor who delivered it was an ancient man whose augmetic eye clicked and whirred as it focused on my face. "Matthias Kane," he said in a voice like gravel shifting in a tomb. "You are selected for the Officio Prefectus. You will serve as Commissar." He placed the peaked cap on my head, the black greatcoat across my shoulders, the silver rosette in my palm. The weight of them felt wrong, too heavy, as if I were being asked to carry something meant for someone larger and stronger. I returned to the barracks wearing the uniform of my new purpose. The reaction was immediate and devastating. Conversations stopped when I entered. Marcus looked up from his data slate, and I saw something in his expression that I had never seen before. Not joy, not pride, pity. He understood before I did what the black greatcoat meant, what I was becoming. He came to me that night and gripped my shoulder, but the gesture felt like farewell rather than celebration. "You'll do the Emperor's work," he said. "You'll save thousands through the strength of your judgment." He did not say I would be happy. He did not say he envied me. He said I would be necessary, and necessity is the coldest comfort the Imperium offers. Senna avoided me entirely after that day. When we passed in the corridors during our final weeks at the Schola, she would nod respectfully, but no longer stop to speak. She recognized what Marcus recognized. I was no longer their companion. I was something other, something that stood apart, a commissar. The troop transport that carried me to my first posting had a mess hall designed for communal dining. Long metal tables bolted to the deck, benches on either side to accommodate 12 soldiers per table. I sat alone at one of those tables for the entire 6-week journey through the warp. Other passengers, mostly infantry replacements and support personnel, would enter the mess hall, see me in my black greatcoat and peaked cap, and find seating elsewhere. No one sat at the Commissar's table. No one ever would. I think of Marcus sometimes, wonder if he still serves the Inquisition, if he hunts heretics across distant sectors as he dreamed. I think of Senna, imagine her standing in cathedral fortresses with bolter raised against the Emperor's enemies. I hope they found the glory they sought. I hope they are not alone. The memories of the Schola feel distant when the Voxcaster erupts with panicked reports. I am pulled from the past into the immediate present, from the quiet contemplation of what I was to the brutal necessity of what I am. The northern defensive line is collapsing. 3 squads have broken under a concentrated Orc assault, their discipline shattering like glass under a Warhammer's blow. I do not hesitate. I do not consider alternatives. I move toward the breach with the bolt pistol already drawn, my greatcoat billowing behind me as I run through the trench network toward the sound of screaming men and roaring Xenos. The scene that greets me is chaos given form. The orcs have punched through our primary defensive line at the junction where 2nd Company meets 3rd Company. A wedge of green-skinned monsters, easily 50 or more, pour through the gap wielding crude choppers and roaring their primitive war cries. Lass fire cuts through the smoke-filled air in desperate, uncoordinated volleys, and falling back from the breach, abandoning their positions, fleeing in complete disorder, are 3 squads of Imperial Guardsmen who have decided that survival matters more than duty. I see Sergeant Vollen first. 20 years of service, veteran of 8 campaigns, squad leader of 2nd Company's 7th Squad. He is running directly toward me, his men streaming behind him in panicked retreat. His face is a mask of primal terror, eyes wide and unfocused, mouth open in gasping breaths. He does not see me until I step directly into his path. "Sergeant, return to your position." My voice cuts through the chaos, calm and absolute. Vollen stops so abruptly that 2 of his men nearly collide with him. Recognition flickers across his face, followed immediately by something worse than fear. The understanding that he has been caught in his cowardice by the one person in this entire regiment who will not accept excuses. "Commissar, we can't hold them. There's too many. We need to fall back to secondary lines." I shoot him in the face. The bolt round enters through his left eye and detonates inside his skull, removing the top of his head in a spray of bone and brain matter. His body drops like a puppet with severed strings. The men behind him freeze, shock overriding panic in the space of a single heartbeat. 30 meters to my right, Corporal Thess leads his squad in full retreat, abandoning the heavy weapons emplacement that controls the eastern approach. I cover the distance in seconds, my boots splashing through pools of blood and mud. Thess sees me coming. He tries to form words, some explanation or plea that might save him. I shoot him in the chest. The mass-reactive round punches through his flak armor and detonates inside his ribcage. He falls backward, already dead, his body striking the ferrocrete wall with a wet impact. 40 meters ahead, Sergeant Callis, the man whose family I had asked about weeks before, is pulling his squad away from their firing positions. I remember his 3 children on Vergust. I remember his 14-year-old son working in the manufactorums. I raise my bolt pistol and put a round through the back of his skull. He pitches forward into the mud without a sound. 3 shots. 3 bodies. 3 squad leaders dead in less than 30 seconds. The effect is immediate and absolute. The fleeing soldiers stop as if they have struck an invisible wall. I stand in the center of the trench, bolt pistol smoking, surrounded by the corpses of their leaders. My voice carries across the sudden silence, cold and merciless as the void between stars. Every man returns to his position. Now, the Emperor demands your courage. I demand your obedience. Anyone who runs will join these cowards in death without honor. They do not think. They do not question. Terror of the orcs is replaced by terror of me, and that terror drives them back toward the breach with desperate, furious energy. They charge past me, screaming prayers to the Emperor and curses at the Xenos. They throw themselves back into firing positions with the manic intensity of men who understand that death waits in both directions. But the death behind them is certain, while the death ahead might still be fought. Lass fire resumes in coordinated volleys. Heavy bolters open up from the emplacements that had been abandoned moments before. Frag grenades arc through the air into the orc wedge. The line holds. The breach is sealed. The greenskins, faced with renewed resistance, fall back under withering fire. Within 10 minutes, the immediate crisis has passed. The defensive line remains intact, purchased with the lives of 3 squad leaders and the fear I have instilled in every surviving soldier. The aftermath is quiet in the way that battlefields become quiet when the fighting moves elsewhere. Medics rush forward to tend the wounded. Tech priests emerge from their bunkers to perform last rites over damaged equipment and recite the litanies of repair. Corpse details begin the grim work of collecting the dead, both ours and the enemy's. And I stand in the blood-soaked trench, surrounded by the carnage my judgment has created, and understand something I have been avoiding for years. This is not a tragedy. This is not a perversion of my purpose. This is my purpose, pure and absolute. The Commissar does not exist to be loved. The Commissar exists to be feared so completely that men will charge into certain death rather than face his judgment. My isolation is not a flaw in the system. It is the fundamental requirement of my function. To have friends would compromise my ability to execute them when duty demands. To be mourned would mean I failed to maintain the necessary distance between myself and those I must be willing to kill. I could not have shot Sergeant Callis if I had allowed myself to care about his children. I could not have executed Corporal Thess if I had shared meals with him and learned his hopes and dreams. I could not have killed Sergeant Vollen if I had permitted myself to see him as anything other than a tactical asset whose failure endangered the regiment. The black greatcoat is not merely a uniform. It is a barrier that must never be breached. The peaked cap is not simply a symbol of authority. It is a crown that separates me from the humanity I serve. Hundreds of soldiers are alive tonight because I killed 3 men without hesitation. The mathematics are absolute. The morality is clear. The loneliness is necessary. The revelation is not liberating. It is crushing in its totality. I will live out my years in service to the Emperor, maintaining discipline through fear, executing those who fail, dying eventually on some distant battlefield where my sacrifice will be logged and filed and forgotten. And I will do all of it alone, because anything else would compromise the terrible effectiveness of my purpose. I holster my bolt pistol and walk back toward the command bunker through trenches filled with soldiers who will not meet my eyes. The transformation does not happen in a single moment, but across the weeks and months that follow. I stop pretending. I stop seeking connection that can never exist. I embrace what I am with the same totality that a tech priest embraces the machine god, or a sororitas embraces her faith. I am Commissar, and that word defines every aspect of my existence. There is a terrible peace in this acceptance, like the calm that settles over a battlefield after the fighting ends, and only corpses remain to mark where violence occurred. My voice becomes harder. Where once I might have offered warning before judgment, now I simply act. A soldier caught sleeping on watch receives the Emperor's mercy without explanation. A private who questions an officer's order in my presence dies before the words finish leaving his mouth. A squad that returns from patrol 3 minutes past their designated time finds their corporal executed for tardiness that endangered operational security. Swift, absolute, without the burden of consideration that might breed hesitation. I walk through the regiment like a spectre of death, and men avert their eyes when I pass. They press themselves against trench walls to create space for me. Conversations die in expanding circles around my presence, silence spreading like blood across water. The camp develops invisible boundaries that soldiers learn through instinct and observation. They know which routes I take during morning inspections and avoid them. They understand which hours I typically occupy the command bunker and ensure their business there is concluded before I arrive. I have become a force of nature, predictable in pattern, but devastating in effect, and the regiment organizes itself around the gravitational pull of my isolation. When I execute a soldier now, I feel nothing. Not guilt, not satisfaction, not the hollow emptiness that plagued me after Victor Rennes. Only the completion of duty, as mechanical and emotionless as a servitor performing its programmed function. The bolt pistol kicks against my palm. The body falls. I holster the weapon and continue with my day. The regiment requires discipline. I provide it. The Emperor demands sacrifice. I deliver it. There is a strange purity in this emotional absence, a clarity that comes from accepting that some functions cannot coexist with feeling. I keep a journal, the only companion I allow myself. A leather-bound book secured with a brass clasp, small enough to fit in the interior pocket of my greatcoat. Each night, by the light of a single lumen in my private quarters, I record the day's executions. Name, rank, unit designation, cause, final words if any were spoken. The entries are brief, clinical, written in the same neat script they taught us at the Schola Progenium. Trooper Ellis Van, 2nd Company, 4th Platoon, executed for abandoning post during artillery barrage. Last words, please sir, I have a daughter. Sergeant Harrick Thorne, 3rd Company, 1st Platoon, executed for distributing contraband alcohol that compromised readiness. Last words, none. Accepted judgment in silence. Private Jonas Kelm, 5th Company, 7th Platoon, executed for striking a superior officer. Last words, it was an accident, I swear by the throne. The journal is not penance. I do not write these entries seeking absolution or processing guilt. It is simply record. Acknowledgement that these men existed, that their deaths served purpose, that the Emperor's justice was administered fairly according to the laws I am sworn to uphold. By the time we deploy to Mordion's Edge, the journal contains 417 names, 417 faces that I can recall with perfect clarity, despite wanting nothing more than to forget them. Sleep becomes difficult. It has never been easy, not since my first execution, but now it fractures into periods of restless unconsciousness, punctuated by sudden waking. The dreams come every night without fail. Faces arranged in rows like soldiers on parade, hundreds of them, thousands of them accumulating across decades of service. Victor Wren stands in the front row, eternally 18 years old, brown hair sticking up at awkward angles. Sergeant Callis stands beside him, the back of his skull missing. Corporal Thess, chest cavity opened by the mass-reactive round. All the others whose names fill my journal. They do not accuse me. They do not rage or weep or beg for mercy they were denied. They simply stare with empty eyes, bearing witness to what I have become. Sometimes I try to speak to them, to explain that their deaths saved others, that the mathematics justified every execution. But no sound emerges from my throat in these dreams, and the faces continue staring with patient, terrible silence. I wake reaching for my bolt pistol. The cold weight of it in my hand provides the only comfort I can find in those pre-dawn hours when sleep will not return. I sit on the edge of my cot, weapon cradled in my lap, and wait for morning inspection while the faces fade back into memory where they wait for the next night's manifestation. The mirror in my quarters shows changes I cannot ignore. Grey threads through my hair, though I am barely into my 4th decade. Lines have carved themselves into the corners of my eyes and across my forehead, marking the passage of years lived under constant tension. My face has taken on a hardness that has nothing to do with muscle and everything to do with the calcification of purpose. I look older than Colonel Vaust, who has 30 years of service against my 20. The weight of judgment ages a man in ways that combat never can. My hands remain steady. My aim remains true. My judgment remains swift and absolute. But the person who stares back from the cracked mirror is someone I would not have recognized during my days at the Schola Progenium. That boy who dreamed of glory and believed in heroism has been burned away completely, consumed in the fires of duty until only ash and iron remain. This is what the Imperium requires. This is what I have become. I accept it, I embrace it, and I continue serving. One execution at a time, one night of broken sleep at a time, 1 year of isolation at a time, until age or warfare finally grants me the release that duty denies. The black greatcoat hangs heavy on my shoulders. The peaked cap presses its grooves deeper into my temples. The journal grows thicker with each passing month. And I remain alone, because I have finally understood that alone is the only way a commissar can be. The isolation I have accepted proves hollow when tested against the reality of meaningless death. The Vox transmission arrives during evening inspection. Priority Alpha encryption from Segmentum Command routed through the planetary defense network. Colonel Faust summons me to the command bunker, and I know from his expression before he speaks that the news carries finality. The hololithic display shows the orbital situation in brutal clarity. The Orc War has grown beyond containment. 12 greenskin rock ships have translated from the warp in the past 72 hours, each one disgorging thousands more Xenos onto the planet's surface. Our defensive lines hold 3 sectors. The Orcs control everything else. The governor is evacuating, Faust says, his voice carefully controlled in the way officers speak when delivering death sentences to men they respect. Within 3 Terran Standard days, this world will be declared perdita. Exterminatus protocols will be implemented. He does not elaborate on what that means. Every soldier in the Astra Militarum knows. Cyclonic torpedoes, viral bombs, atmospheric incinerators, methods that reduce entire worlds to lifeless husks when Xeno's corruption has spread too far to be cleansed by conventional warfare. Our orders? Hold the northern sectors until critical infrastructure can be destroyed. Gene seed repositories from the Iron Hammers chapter. Keep. Manufacturum templates in the industrial zones. Anything that cannot be allowed to fall into Xeno hands. The Mechanicus needs 48 hours to complete sanctified demolition protocols. 48 hours. 2 days to hold against a horde that has already overrun 3/4 of the planet. 2 days before fire falls from the sky and reduces everything we have fought for to ash and memory. I understand immediately what this means, and I see in Vost's eyes that he understands as well. We are not holding these positions so that we can evacuate afterward. We are holding them so that we can die here, buying time with our lives for the Imperium's strategic assets to be properly destroyed. The men? I ask. I am informing company commanders within the hour. Commissar Caney, I need you to maintain order. There will be... He pauses, choosing words carefully. There will be discipline issues. Discipline issues. A gentle euphemism for the reality that soldiers facing certain death often decide survival matters more than duty. The desertion begins within hours of the announcement. It starts as a trickle. 3 men from 5th Company who slip away during shift change. By dawn, it has become a flood. Entire squads abandon their posts. Soldiers throw down their laser guns and flee south toward the evacuation zones, hoping somehow to find transport off-world before the Exterminatus fleet arrives. They are chasing a lie. The evacuation is for essential personnel only, planetary governors and administratum officials and tech priests who carry irreplaceable knowledge. Not guardsmen. Never guardsmen. We are the Imperium's most expendable resource, and this world will be our grave. I execute 12 men on the first day, caught in the act of desertion, dragged before me by military police, who are themselves showing signs of wavering loyalty. I shoot them in groups of 3, assembly line efficiency, their bodies falling into hasty mass graves dug by penal labor, squads. 12 bolt rounds, 12 names added to my journal, 12 faces that will join the others in my dreams. The second day is worse. 20 executions before midday. I lose count of the names. They blur together into a continuous procession of terror and pleading and final prayers to an emperor who has abandoned this world to fire. My bolt pistol grows hot from repeated firing. I am forced to switch to my backup weapon, a plasma pistol that I typically reserve for ceremonial occasions. The superheated gas burns cleaner than bolt rounds, leaving cauterized wounds instead of explosive trauma. The executions continue. Something breaks during the 20th. Perhaps in me, perhaps in the universe itself. The man they bring before me is Sergeant First Class Darren Moore, 53 Terran years old, veteran of 30 years continuous service across 40 separate campaigns. His service record lists commendations for valor, battlefield promotions earned through demonstrated courage, scars from wounds that would have killed lesser men. His face is weathered like ancient stone, lined with decades of warfare and privation, and in his eyes, I see something I have never seen in all my years of executions. Not fear, not rage, clarity. Sergeant Moore, you were apprehended attempting to desert your post. Do you deny this charge? No, Commissar. I was running. Same as any sane man would when he knows he's been sold for time measured in hours. I raise the plasma pistol, aim at his forehead. Standard protocol, swift justice. But Moore does not look away. He does not beg. He stares directly into my eyes and speaks words that cut deeper than any blade. You'll die here too, Commissar, right alongside the rest of us when the fires come. But you know what the difference will be. His voice is steady, almost conversational. When I die, there'll be men who remember me. Men I saved. Men I fought beside. Men who'll raise a glass in some forgotten outpost and speak my name, with respect. But you, he shakes his head slowly, no one will remember your name. No one will weep for you. No one will speak of Matthias Kane with anything but the same fear they felt when you walked among them. You'll die as alone as you lived, and the galaxy will forget you existed within a week. I pull the trigger. The plasma bolt vaporizes his skull in a flash of superheated light. His body collapses, smoke rising from the cauterized stump of his neck. The execution is complete. Justice has been served. The Emperor's will has been done. But his words echo in the aftermath, louder than the weapon's discharge, louder than the murmured prayers of witnesses, louder than my own heartbeat. They echo through the remainder of the day as I execute 3 more deserters. They echo that night as I sit alone in my quarters and try to write names in my journal, but find my hand shaking too badly to form legible letters. They echo in the face of every soldier I pass, in their averted eyes, and rigid fear in the absolute absence of anything resembling human connection. Sergeant Moore was right. I will die here when the Exterminatus fleet arrives, and I will die exactly as I have lived, alone, unmourned, forgotten. The black greatcoat that separates me from humanity will become my shroud, and no one will weep. The words do not stop echoing. They follow me through the final 36 hours as the Orc War masses for its ultimate assault. I hear them in the rumble of distant artillery. I hear them in the screams of wounded men being carried to Medici stations that have run out of supplies to treat them. I hear them in the silence of my own quarters, where sleep will no longer come, and the faces in my dreams have multiplied beyond counting. You will die as alone as you lived. The truth of it sits in my chest like a piece of shrapnel too deep to extract, poisoning everything around it. The final assault begins at dawn on the 3rd day. The Vox network explodes with contact reports from every sector simultaneously. The Greenskins have committed everything they have to this push, understanding somehow that we are trapped here, that we have nowhere to retreat, that this is not a battle but an execution waiting to happen. I stand in the command bunker watching the hololithic display dissolve into chaos as position markers blink from green to red to black. 1st Squad, 2nd Platoon, 5th Company, the entire eastern defensive line. All gone within 20 minutes. The bunker itself shakes from artillery impacts, dust raining from the reinforced ceiling with each detonation. The Vox channels fill with screams and desperate last transmissions, and then static as units are simply erased from existence. This is Gamma 7. We are being overrun. Request immediate. Silence. Command, this is Delta Company. We have Xenos in the trenches. They are... Silence. For the Emperor, for Terra, for... Silence. Each transmission cuts off mid-sentence as death finds the men speaking them. Around me, the command staff prepares for the end with the quiet efficiency of professional soldiers who have always known this possibility existed. Officers check their sidearms, ensuring they have rounds remaining for when the enemy breaks through the final doors. Tech priests move between cogitator banks, deleting classified data according to protocols established 10,000 years ago. Strategic planning documents, tactical assessments, communications protocols. Everything that might be useful to the enemy is systematically destroyed, reduced to random gibberish that no amount of Xeno's savagery could reconstruct. Servitors stand in their alcoves, awaiting final instructions that will never come. Colonel Harren Vaust stands at the strategic table, watching the hololithic display show the death of his regiment in real time. 7 years I have served under his command. 7 years during which we have coordinated battlefield discipline and tactical necessity. 7 years of professional courtesy maintained across the unbridgeable gulf of my function. He has been a good officer, fair but firm, tactically sound, devoted to his men while understanding that devotion sometimes requires sacrifice. I have never known his favorite food. I have never heard him speak of his home world. I have never asked about his family or his dreams or his regrets. The bunker shakes again, more violently this time. The lighting flickers and stabilizes. Emergency lumens cast everything in red shadows that make the command staff look like figures from ancient religious paintings depicting the hells beneath Terra. The Vox network has gone almost completely silent now. There are no more units to report. No more soldiers to call for help that cannot come. Just static and the occasional burst of orc vocalizations as the Xenos discover our communication frequencies and broadcast their triumph. Vaust turns from the display and looks at me. For a moment, neither of us speaks. What is there to say? The regiment is dead. The world is dying. We have minutes remaining before the greenskins breach the bunker's final defenses. Then he does something that shocks me more thoroughly than any weapon could. He extends his hand. It has been an honor, Commissar Kane. I stare at his offered hand for what feels like an eternity compressed into seconds. The first genuine gesture of human connection offered to me in years. Not fear, not forced respect. Simply acknowledgement from one soldier to another that we shared service to the Emperor and are about to share death. I reach out and clasp his hand. His grip is firm, his palm calloused from decades of handling weapons and signing death warrants and bearing the weight of command. The contact feels alien after so long without touch that was not violent or procedural. The honor was mine, Colonel. We hold the grip for 3 heartbeats, then release. There is nothing more to say. Around us, junior officers embrace. Aides and adjutants clasp shoulders and speak quiet prayers. The chaplain, if he still lived, would be administering final rites. But Chaplain Voigt died 6 hours ago when 3rd Company's position was overrun. So we face the end without spiritual comfort, with only the cold certainty that we fulfilled our duty until the universe gave us no choice but to surrender. The bunker doors explode inward in a shower of twisted metal and ferrocrete fragments. Orc roars fill the space where Imperial discipline had reigned. Las fire and crude ballistic weapons discharge in the enclosed space, deafening, final. I draw my bolt pistol and fire into the green tide. Officers around me do the same, selling their lives for seconds more of defiance. I see Colonel Voust fall, his chest opened by a burst of heavy stubber fire. His senior aide tries to reach him and dies alongside him, their bodies falling together. Captain Oral and Lieutenant Moore, friends who had served, together for a decade, die back-to-back defending the cogitator banks. The tech priests are torn apart by chain axes, their dying prayers to the Omnissiah cut short by Xeno's savagery. And I stand in my corner of the collapsing bunker, bolt pistol barking its final defiance, utterly alone even in this moment of shared extinction. The officers died with their comrades. The tech priests died in service to their machine god. I die executing my function, removing 3 more greenskins before the magazine runs empty, and there is no time to reload. In my final moments, as an orc chopper descends toward my skull, I do not think of the Emperor's grace or the glory of martyrdom. I think of Victor Renz, 18 years old, weeping behind a supply crate, begging for mercy I did not give. The first name in my journal. The face that started all of this. I wonder if the isolation was worth it. If the thousands I saved through fear justified the absolute loneliness of my existence. The chopper falls. I die without answer, without witness, without mourning. The perfect death for a commissar. Alone. The darkness lasts only a moment before something else arrives. Not consciousness, not the Emperor's light or the peace that faith promises to the faithful. Simply absence. Commissar Matthias Caney ceases to exist in the command bunker beneath Mordian's edge, and the universe continues without pause or acknowledgement of his passing. 6 hours later, the Exterminatus fleet arrives in high orbit. 3 Navy destroyers carrying the Emperor's final judgment for worlds too corrupted to save. The order is transmitted by encrypted Vox channel directly from Segmentum Command. Mordian's edge is declared perdita. All Imperial forces have been confirmed killed in action. The Orc presence has spread beyond acceptable containment parameters. Cleanse and sanctify. The cyclonic torpedoes launch in sequence, their contrails drawing lines of fire across the void. Each warhead contains enough destructive force to crack continents, to boil oceans, to reduce mountains to vapor. They strike the surface with mathematical precision, targeting tectonic weak points that will cause maximum cascading destruction. The first detonations register on orbital sensors as light bright enough to temporarily blind observation equipment. The shock waves race outward at supersonic speeds, flattening everything in their path. Cities, forests, mountains, the trenches where 10,000 guardsmen fought and died, the command bunker where Commissar Caney fell, all of it reduced to superheated plasma. The second wave of torpedoes strikes before the first has finished its work, and then the third, and the fourth. The planet's atmosphere ignites, turning the entire world into a funeral pyre visible from 3 systems away. Tectonic plates shift and fracture. The mantle breaches the crust in 1,000 locations simultaneously. Volcanic fury consumes what the torpedoes missed. Within 12 hours, Mordian's edge has been transformed from a fortress world into a sphere of molten glass, orbiting its star like a tomb marker for the billions who died there. In the command bunker's ruins, buried beneath kilometers of liquefied rock, nothing remains of Matthias Kane except atoms scattered through the planetary death. His bolt pistol has vaporized, his black greatcoat has burned to less than ash. His journal, containing 537 names written in careful script, no longer exists in any form that could be recovered or read. The men he executed, the soldiers he disciplined, the regiment he served, all of it erased as thoroughly as if none of it had ever happened. 3 months later, in the archives of the Departamento Munitorum on Terra, a scribe named Adept Helicon processes casualty reports from the Mordian's Edge campaign. The work is tedious, repetitive, precisely the kind of task assigned to junior administratum personnel to test their devotion to duty. He inputs data from official records transmitted before the world fell. Names, ranks, unit designations, cause of death. Each entry takes approximately 45 seconds to complete. Each entry represents a human life extinguished in service to the Imperium. He reaches the file marked Commissar Matthias Caney, Officio Prefectus, attached to Cadian 800th Regiment. 37 years of service across 12 separate campaigns spanning 9 sectors. 89 confirmed executions for cowardice, desertion, and failure to maintain discipline. Killed in action during final defensive operations. Mordian's Edge, Segmentum Obscurus. The scribe inputs the information with the same mechanical efficiency he has applied to the previous 3,000 entries today. There is a notation field for next of kin to be notified. Helicon checks the personnel records. No listed family, no registered friends, no emergency contacts. This is standard for commissars. The Officio Prefectus does not encourage personal attachments that might compromise judgment. The scribe marks the field with the standard notation. None applicable. No condolence letters will be sent. No one waits for Commissar Caney to return home because commissars have no home except the battlefields where they enforce the Emperor's discipline. The file is completed and archived among 10,000 others from the same campaign. Guardsmen and officers and tech priests and all the other souls who burned when the world burned. Matthias Cane's service record becomes part of the Imperium's vast administrative memory, stored in data vaults deep beneath Terra's surface, where it will remain until the universe ends, or the files are purged to make room for newer casualties. Both outcomes are equally likely across the span of eternity. On distant worlds, in trenches carved from alien soil, other commissars stand in black greatcoats and peaked caps. They execute soldiers for cowardice. They walk alone through camps, filled with men who fear them more than the enemy. They sleep fitfully when they sleep at all, dreaming of faces that stare with empty accusation. They understand, as Matthias understood, that isolation is not a flaw in their function, but its fundamental requirement. To inspire through fear requires being feared. To judge without hesitation requires separation from those being judged. They accept this because the alternative is the collapse of the Astra Militarum's discipline. Because without commissars, the soldiers would break and run when the darkness presses close and courage fails. Because one death administered swiftly saves 1,000 deaths later when entire regiments dissolve into chaos. The mathematics are absolute. The morality is clear. The loneliness is necessary and eternal. They will die on forgotten worlds. They will be recorded in files that no one reads and archived in vaults that no one visits. They will have no comrades to mourn them and no families to speak their names with love. This is not tragedy. This is duty. This is the price the Imperium demands from those who wear the black greatcoat and peaked cap. This is what it means to be Commissar. The Emperor protects, but no one protects the Commissar. No one remembers him when he falls. No one weeps when his file is archived. He exists in the space between courage and terror, maintaining the balance through fear, dying alone so that others might die together with some small comfort of companionship in their final moments. In the archives on Terra, Adept Helicon moves to the next casualty file. The work continues, the Imperium endures. And in the silence between the stars, the name Matthias Cane fades into the vast anonymity of Imperial service. One more soldier among billions, forgotten before his body finished cooling. This is how commissars die. Alone. Always alone.